So good morning. This is Ray Ledgerwood with you at the NASCA informational webinar on urban and stormwater pest management practice programs. We're glad that you've taken time out of your busy day to join us today, and we look forward to giving you some great presentations on urban and stormwater BMP programs from across the nation. Mike Brown will be with us in just a bit to say a few opening remarks. Again, I'm Ray Ledgerwood, your moderator for today's session. Mike, why don't you get us started with a few words?
Okay, will do. Thanks, Ray. First of all, welcome to all of our NASCA members and partners to this year's first NASCA webinar. We try to do 3 to 4 of these per year, and the subject matter comes to us based on requests from membership. This webinar will be based, as you know, on the urban and stormwater BMP programs. First, I'd like to thank our speakers. Ray has assembled a list of true experts from around the country. I would also like to thank Washington State for hosting the technical side of this webinar. And lastly, I'd like to thank Ray Ledgerwood for assembling these speakers and hosting this session for us. I think it's going to be tremendously beneficial, and Ray will explain to you how and when to ask questions of our speakers. I think we're going to have plenty of time for them to present and to handle your questions. So without further ado, Ray, why don't we go ahead and get this thing rolling?
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. So the logistics for today's webinar will be all the lines will be muted except for the presenters. We'll unmute the presenter lines and have them present to you. We'll have them answering questions live. But we're going to take those questions via the web. So use your dashboard on the computer, go to the questions area. There's a plus sign there. Tap the plus sign. Should give you an area where you can enter the questions that you have. If you've just joined us, go ahead and give that a try by typing NASCA in the questions dashboard. That way we'll know that your machine is talking with ours. We're going to get to as many of these questions as we can. And just to note that I've started the recording so that the presentation will be recorded and will be placed on the NASCA website. Feedback's always welcome. Kudos, comments, recommendations for future webinars to Mike Brown at the email address that's shown there on the screen. So the description for our webinar today is that it is an informational webinar that NASCA has arranged with a presentation from conservation leaders across the nation to showcase how states are handling erosion control plan reviews, stormwater programs, training, and how the best management practices and the state's manual for erosion control are published and updated. So our agenda for today will include those opening comments that we're just about through with, the agenda and the session objective. Then we'll start right out with New York. Jim Lieberman has joined us from New York. Nebraska, Lori Laster has joined us, and Delaware, Jamie Rutherford, have joined us today. We'll stop right there, take a few minutes for questions and responses from those 3 speakers. Then we'll move to presentations from Washington State, Stu Treefry, from Indiana, Randy Braun, and from Pennsylvania, Jennifer Orr. Stop again, have more questions, and then close by noon Eastern Time today. Looking forward to the presentation by Jim Lieberman. And Jim, let me do one mic check with you before we send you off here. So Jim, go ahead and say a few words to us and start your presentation. Welcome, Jim, from Warren County, New York. Jim?
Hi, thanks, Ray. My name's Jim Lieberman. I'm the district manager for the Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District and the Stormwater Management Officer for Warren County and the town of Queensbury. So we wear a lot of hats up in this office. We're going to talk today about our district and some of our communities, and getting right into it. As most states are familiar with, the MS4 program, Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System Program. If you look at the map, you can see Warren County, where it's located in New York State. We're in the Adirondacks. Most of the time when I go to an NACD meeting or other national meeting, people will ask where I'm from, and I'll say Canada. So upstate New York is very different from downstate New York. We have several MS4 communities that I have circled and shown blown up in the Google map. Queensbury and Glens Falls, those are in our county. We assist the town of Queensbury and Warren County because in about 2008 they became the MS4 communities, and they were having trouble meeting the goals of the plans and requirements that were laid out by New York and the EPA for the MS4 communities. So we actually are field-oriented. We do a lot of assistance work for them. For example, stormwater conveyance mapping, we're out there using our GPS units and GIS to develop the stormwater drainage maps. Many people don't realize that our municipalities don't have these down on paper, or if they do, they are not digital. And you can see some of the activities that we participate in and get the public involved with, such as the storm drain markers. That's actually the image of the 5 people in the top right. That's a local consulting firm, and they took their lunchtime and went out and did storm drain marking. We do outfall reconnaissance inventory and illicit discharge detection. And if we find something, we pass that along to the agency that's responsible for it, either the town of Queensbury Planning Department or the Warren County Department of Public Works, and they deal with things quite differently. And stream cleanups, which most communities participate in. It's just a great way of getting the public involved. This is some of the sampling we do. Here's an example of the town of Queensbury. We work with their planning department many hours out of the week. And in this case, the data that we collect for the community is available for publicly viewing at the town of Queensbury's website. They have a GIS coordinator who's fantastic, and we provide the data sheets and the locations from our GPS, and they sync it up on their real-time server, and people can go in there, find a drop inlet or find an outfall, click on it, and see what has been sampled. So this has been a very valuable tool in getting the information to the public, and as well as educating the authorities in Queensbury. Some of the projects that the communities work on, town of Queensbury, Sunset Lane, a developed area along Lake George, which was one of our surface water drinking water lakes. Lake George is recognized across the country as being one of the quote-unquote best lakes to have in your area, and having that moniker also comes with a lot of responsibility. It's again, drinking water surface. A couple of the communities draw right out of there, and it's important that we assist the communities in maintaining high levels of water quality. Infiltration systems, conveyances, vegetation, those are all things that we want to look at to try to disconnect stormwater where possible. Our soils are, many of our soils are hydrologic soil group A or B, so infiltration is completely plausible. Some other areas that we're looking at is in the town of Queensbury for the Glen Lake watershed, disconnecting, getting into the ground, treating it, vegetative treatments. You can see a small rain garden. The Parks and Rec department was laughing when we started it, and then everybody joined in and they want to put another one in. It's these small little projects or small little victories that go a long way to getting buy-in from the workers, not necessarily the supervisors, but the workers to put these in. And then it's publicly visible. This is a park which is used all through the summer because there's a pool there. So, continuing on, if we don't have an area where we can do kind of a fancy type of treatment project, we have used these coir logs, and there's some other technologies out there now, such as silt socks, to extend the flow path. This is a strange angle. It actually looks like it's heading downhill. This is running parallel to the slope or the contour, and water. We're just elongating the stormwater flow path so that infiltration can occur, deposition can occur in the forest land before it gets into Glen Lake, which is a highly developed lake in our community. And this is one of the things that we were able to do around Glen Lake. This is a public launch, boat launch on Glen Lake, which is used any morning you go by there. The parking lot is full from kayakers, canoeists, or car top boats. We are having problems with water coming down off of Glen Lake Road, which is in the background. We do have, or the town has a dry well up there to infiltrate what it can, but water would still find its way around that, come down, come across this material that was there, which is kind of an item 4, a stone dust, and 1, settle there, or 2, continue just off of the screen and into the lake. We said we had some dollars from New York State Department of Environmental Conservation grant to do some porous pavers there, and we gave it a test run 2 years ago, and I would say it was 95% successful. We had 1 minor issue. We remedied that and then offered up some more money to do the rest of the parking lot. The town was thrilled. The people are excited because in an MS4 community, it's not just water quality, it's also water quantity. So if we can get the water off of the parking lot, if we can get moving away, if we can separate it from any type of potential pet waste and bacteria, that's a good thing for us. Warren County Department of Public Works has bought into this as well. It helps out when you have funds available that they can utilize for supplies and materials to do projects. Simple projects such as getting out there doing some infiltration systems for water quantity control. This isn't a huge area for non-point source impacts, but it drains down to the lower road that you can see in the second image, and was having impact on private properties. So disconnecting some of that water volume, treating that, getting that into the ground, and also we are out there, we have a hydroseeder, and I think that's one of the next slides, but we're out there hand seeding and mulching, getting it out there. So we have a good partnership built up with the DPW and the local town. Our hydroseeding power mulching program, if you are getting into urban, suburban stormwater, this is one thing I would strongly encourage you to do. It's very visible, and it's highly effective. You can get rid of basically 90% of the problems with erosion through this type of program. We have our own hydroseeder and power mulcher, and if we have a grant, we are happy to provide the service free of charge to the communities, and that is almost 100% of the time. It has to be water quality improvement related. And as you can see, we have a variety of areas here that we're doing. We have to use, in most of our county, 0 phosphorus fertilizers, and the fact is we really don't need a lot of phosphorus, and we use straw rather than hay. We're very concerned about weed seed in the hay, and even then we try to use hydroseeding as much as possible because we do not live in an agricultural county, and a bale of straw for us is about $11. So hydroseeding is much more effective and cost-effective and efficient. And the last thing I'll say is dealing with our communities, we're getting involved in hazard mitigation. I'm also the hazard mitigation coordinator for the county. These are images of some of the problems that we've had. The one that usually gets the most comment is the left one, top left, where there's a pickup truck. That's actually our office truck. That's a GMC 1500 series. You can see that is on a road in my town, and the Hudson River is just on the other side of that, and the ice jam comes up and over. That was 2 years ago. They have to take in heavy equipment and cut the road open every few years. But we have our minor landslides. The bottom middle picture actually is a lake that came up during last year's spring snowmelt and rainfall event, and it's level with the parking lot and almost getting to the porta-johns. So we want to try to correct those things. And why do we do it? It's for the last slide here. This is actually the Hudson River in our county. Most people think of New York City. I personally have been to New York City about 4 times in my life. and but this is what I'm used to. This is just a good river up by us. There's actually, the Schroon River comes in on the right-hand side. This is a confluence of two major watersheds, and we live here, we work here, and I want to stay here for the rest of my life. So if we can assist the communities with their urban issues or suburban or rural issues, we will. And we started in on the stormwater projects about 20 years ago, and we continue to the day. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to take them.
Thanks, Jim, and let's check for some questions and remind the participants, if you do have a question for any of our presenters, please go ahead and type those into the area on the dashboard there that you have, and probably in the top right-hand corner of your screen. Type those questions in, and we'll handle as many of those as we can. So, Jim, thanks so much for your presentation, and no questions have came in the dashboard yet, but we're expecting quite a few to come in. So hang on there with us, and we'll get to some questions in just a bit. It's my pleasure, and we'll do an audio check with Lori. Lori, are you on today?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hey, we can hear you fine, Lori. Welcome. Lori comes to us from Nebraska to talk with us about an overview on a Avalon Creek watershed stormwater program and policies. We're looking forward to hearing from Lori in Nebraska. So, Lori, take it away.
Okay. First, I kind of wanted to go over what our natural resources district system is. In 1972, the Nebraska legislature decided to take over 150 special conservation districts, soil conservation boards, rural water districts, drainage districts, and combine those into 23 districts based on watershed boundary with property taxing authority to really start to manage our natural resources as a whole and not one group managing water, one group managing soil. The Papio Missouri River District is the district that covers the city of Omaha, which is the largest city in Nebraska. We are the smallest land area district. There on the very right side of your map, we cover 6 counties along the Missouri River on the border with Iowa. Next slide, please. This is a little bit closer up. You can see our district, the orange area. That is the urbanized area, the city of Omaha, with several of its suburbs, with our mission to wisely conserve, manage, and enhance soil, water, wildlife, and forest resources for the good of all people within the district. Next. One unique thing about our district, we have a watershed, the Papillion Creek watershed. It's about 400 square miles, and about a third of the entire state's population lives within this 400 square mile area. To give you a little bit of idea, that's 0.5% of the total land area in Nebraska. So it is a very heavily urbanized area. There are about 11 entities involved within that area. So that's where we decided to form the Papillion Creek Watershed Partnership. Next slide, please. Like I said, 3 counties, 11 cities, and about a third of the Nebraska population lives within this one watershed. That's not a large area to have 11 entities, and the goal was really to get to a point where everybody could manage their water and stormwater the same way. Next. So the partnership, as we call it, was established in 2001. Coincidentally, the city of Omaha was a Phase 1 MS4 community for quite some time. The rest of the communities you see, Bellevue, Boys Town, La Vista, Papillion, Ralston, Sarpy County, in 2001 they were all deemed to be a Phase 2 community. Being much smaller than the city of Omaha, they kind of freaked out a little bit and said, you know, what do we do, what do we do? So we formed this partnership really to help manage everything as efficiently and economically as possible. We work through a dues system. Each entity pays in a certain amount of dues based on population and area within the watershed, and all inspections and program management are handled through that interlocal agreement. And then the NRD also assists that partnership in certain ways with technical assistance, and we pay money as well. Next, please. So our mission was to address issues related to water quality and stormwater quantity by establishing regionally common goals and standards. The population projections at the time were that the watershed would be fully urbanized by the year 2040. That's still probably, with the crash that we had in the market in 2008, we're kind of projecting that a little bit further out now, but about 8 years we think that set us back before we are fully urbanized in the watershed. Next, please. So a lot of work went into developing policies and regulations that are implemented throughout this partnership. We had 6 main policy groups: water quality improvement, peak flow reduction, landscape preservation, erosion and sediment control, floodplain management, and stormwater management financing. The state of Nebraska legislature has not granted communities the authority to charge a stormwater utility fee. So all of the stormwater programs are funded through mainly property taxes, which can be a little bit challenging. There are a lot of projects that are vying for those dollars and trying to convince everybody that these are really important and we do need to keep this up has been challenging. So there were several strategies that we came up with to help create sustainable financing for maintaining stormwater projects. Next, please. And so our role here at the NRD, we are not a community, we're not a Phase 4 or a Phase 2 MS4 or anything like that, but we are the administering agency of the partnership, which basically means we do the management, we handle the finances, we make sure everybody that needs to be paid is paid, and we keep track of all the paperwork. But through that, we also provide technical assistance, especially to the smaller communities. The City of Omaha, they have the resources to hire engineers to review grading plans and stormwater plans, but some of the smaller communities don't have those resources or that staff, and that's where I come in. I look at development plans and I make a recommendation to that city of, yes, this meets your regulation, or no, it doesn't, and this is what we need to do. On the NRD, we also construct projects. We do a lot of regional flood control is really our main focus, but we also do water quality projects. And we provide cost share for entities that want to do those same projects. Most of the time it's stream restoration type projects or water quality basins to provide settlement. And then our sole funded projects tend to be large flood control dams and levees. And I think that's all I had. I think that was my last slide.
Thanks, Lori. Outstanding presentation, and looking forward to having the folks enter a few questions in the questions dashboard. We'll get to those right after Jamie's presentation. And so, Lori, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Jamie will do a sound check with you. Jamie Rutherford.
Hi, Ray. Can you hear me okay?
We're hearing you just fine, Jamie. So joining us today, Jamie Rutherford from Delaware, and going to give us an overview of the State of Delaware Sediment and Stormwater Program. Jamie, take it away.
Well, good morning. I'm with the State of Delaware, the Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, also known as DNREC, and I'm with the Division of Watershed Stewardship, and I'm the Program Manager for the Sediment and Stormwater Program. So I'll be providing you with a very brief overview of our program. And Delaware is a coastal state, and we do in some areas have very good infiltration rates because of that. In Delaware, we operate under our own state law, sediment and stormwater law. And next slide. So we've had the law and the regulations in place since January of 1991. The program recently revised our regulations. So these new regulations were promulgated in July of 2013, and we had an effective date of January 1, 2014. So we could provide some training to the regulated public before they became effective. So some of the changes to our regulations, we revised. We went from a peak-based to a volume-based management. Instead of looking at stormwater on a site level, we went to watershed level management. We did separate our regulatory language from our technical requirements, and we streamlined the plan review and approval process. So the revised regulations have been written to set the requirements of what you have to do, and the technical document provided guidance on how to achieve the goals of the regulation. So the technical document combined all of the information that supports the regulations, such as background information, procedures, checklists, standards and specifications, and example projects. The regulations, as well as the technical document, went through a public review process. So to update the technical document, all changes must be public noticed in our newspaper. And you'll see here the technical document is currently, this is just a snapshot of our website, that we have a series of PDF links. We don't really have any printed version of the technical document because it'd be too lengthy to print. It's about 2,000 pages. So the Erosion and Sediment Control Handbook manual, we've revised that. So all our E&S practices should be designed in accordance with this 2013 Delaware Standards and Specifications for Erosion and Sediment Control. And we really just call it the E&S Handbook. And you can see what we've rescinded, and you can see that we revised a lot of E&S control practices. And there's a whole listing there. Post-construction stormwater BMP standards and specifications is new, and it covers all the BMPs that are available for use. And on this next slide, I show the permanent stormwater BMPs that are offered. Next slide. So who is covered by the regulations? Well, in Delaware, any land disturbing activities over 5,000 square feet are covered by our regulations. There are some exemptions: agricultural land management practices, such as tilling, land disturbance activities less than 5,000 square feet, commercial forest harvesting, and land application of biosolids. Again, the regulations pertain to all land disturbing activities over 5,000 square feet. And by the way, the Walmart regional distribution centers are not exempt. This next slide here shows how the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System is delegated from EPA to our department, our Division of Water Resources. And that division is responsible for our MS4 program. And they, in turn, delegate the portion covering the construction activities to the sediment and stormwater program. Next. The owner and developer obviously needs coverage, as well as home builders for the construction general permit. So to gain construction general permit coverage, you must comply with our regulations. You must have an approved sediment and stormwater plan, and you must have a notice of intent or NOI for stormwater discharges associated with construction activities. Next slide. In Delaware, the Stormwater Pollution Prevention Plan, commonly known as the SWIP, is not a standalone document like it is in other states, but it's on our approved sediment and stormwater plan. So the plan itself contains our pollution prevention specs, and that is our SWIP in Delaware. So the DNREC Sediment and Stormwater Program implements all aspects of the law and regulations on state and federal project sites. And through our law and regulations, we have the ability to delegate the program elements to conservation districts, municipalities, and other state agencies. So local implementation of our program for privately owned projects is carried out by these local agencies known as delegated agencies. In addition to implementing the program for projects on state and federal sites, we also provide technical guidance and oversight of program implementation by the delegated agencies. We provide education and training relative to the sediment and stormwater program. We maintain all current information regarding implementation of our program on our website. And we also keep a monthly listserv to distribute emerging information and training dates to those that subscribe. Next slide. An approved plan is required for all land disturbance over 5,000 square feet. The plan's good for 3 years. An owner or developer could get an extension of their plan. Any revision would require approval. And the plan must be on site at all times. Next slide. Through our regulations, we do have the ability to develop criteria for cases when a standardized sediment and stormwater management plan may satisfy the requirements in place of the detailed plan. So the project needs to meet the standard plan applicable criteria for the project type, and that project has the option to comply with the conditions of the standard plan in lieu of developing a detailed sediment and stormwater plan. And here's just a listing of the project types that we have developed thus far. We do offer a 2-day designer training to assist of individuals who will be preparing detailed plan and engineering computations. We also, next slide. We also offer the contractor certification course. We know this as the Blue Card class. It's a 5-hour class that provides overview of our sediment and stormwater program, the regulations, and the required E&S measures in our state. And our regulations do require that every job site have at least one person on site at all times who has taken this course. And a lot of times the participants of the course, they're either contractors or developers that are out of state. So it's really a good training for them. This next course that we offer is a certified construction reviewer. It's also known as the CCR, and we call it the Gold Card. It's like a private inspector, and they're hired by the developer when required by the review agency. So basically, they're the eyes and ears out there for the delegated agency and for our state and federal projects. And we rely on their reports, and they're our eyes and ears out in the field. So that's just another tool that we have. It's a 2.5-day training. The half day is a mandatory field trip. They do take an exam, and they get a certification. It's good for 5 years, and then they have the opportunity to come to a 1-day class to recertify for another 5 years. Any questions?
Thanks, Jamie, Lori, and Jim. There are a few questions that are starting to roll in now, and just to encourage everyone to enter your questions in the dashboard. We'll pull these up just one at a time and ask our first 3 presentations presenters these questions. Jim, Lori, Jamie, outstanding presentations. We've learned a lot. The first question will be to Lori, and it's a question about the Abiel, Missouri River NRD. How did you get the towns to come together and enter into this partnership?
You know, that's a little bit before my time at the NRD, but from what I understand, a lot of it was kind of based around the communities having concerns about being designated Phase 2 MS4s. There's a lot of unknowns, and really the big driving factor was, you know, in the Omaha area, you can drive from one community and you don't know which one you're in. It's very, very close. And so, you know, what keeps that developer from going 2 blocks into the next community, because their regulations are a little bit lighter. So there was a little bit of wanting to make sure that economic development wasn't affected by any sort of regulations that came from being designated as an MS4. And there was also a lot of concern about some of the smaller communities not having the resources to complete all of the inspections and surveys and data collection that are required under their permit. So working through an interlocal agreement that allows the City of Omaha, they get paid a certain amount of money every year to provide those services to the other communities.
Thanks so much, Lori. Very good. A question for Delaware. What is the fee structure for the blue and gold card certifications, annual fees, course fees, and et cetera?
Well, the structure for the blue card or the gold card, we definitely have a set amount, $90 or $225 for the gold card. So there is a fee for attending the classes. It's pretty nominal compared to other certification classes. And as far as did I cover everything, Ray, or was there some more fees?
Yeah, that was the fee structure in particular for the blue and gold card certifications, annual fees, course fees. You have some training fees for or other types of fees.
No, I mean we delegate our program to, like I said, to the delegated agencies. They're able to recover costs. I mean, we don't give them funding, but they are able to charge plan approval fees and construction review fees and maintenance fees. So that's the structure of funding for the delegated agencies. And then DNREC does charge a one-time fee right now for the construction general permit. However, we're looking at making that an annual fee. And then, of course, we also conduct the training, and we have a fee associated with the blue card and the gold card.
Very good. Thanks so much. For Lori, what is the source of funds for the cost share you administer in a watershed flood control work?
So NRDs have a property taxing authority in the state of Nebraska, and so that comes from our general property tax dollars that we collect every year.
Okay. So again, that's a fee that's right to the natural resource districts within Nebraska, and they cover that.
Yes.
Okay. assessment, property tax, what is it?
It is a property tax, just like a school district or a county tax. So it comes directly, you know, for most people's escrow company directly to us.
Okay. A question for Jamie again. Did you evaluate using EnviroCert international programs rather than creating your own certification program?
I'm not sure, Ray, because when I came aboard, I've been with the program for 10 years, and it was already in place, so I'm not sure of what they looked at. But we have gotten a lot of kudos from EPA and other states who attend our certification course. So we haven't gone online at all with it. We keep it very hands-on. And as I said, part of the CCR course, we do have a half-day mandatory field trip because we feel like we have to, you know, obviously for an inspector type of training, you need to go into the field and see everything.
So a question again, Jamie, while you're on the line, does funding from the state follow your delegation, or is it entirely funded from permit?
Yeah, that's what, it does not follow our delegation. The delegated agencies have the ability under our regulations to charge a fee for plan review and construction review and maintenance review. So they do have to public notice their fees, but certainly they have the ability, and that's what they use to run their program.
For the states, what is the general NPDES stormwater permit load in your state? And let's start with Jim. Jim, what's the general NPDES stormwater permit load for your state?
You mean as far as actual numbers?
Yes, the question is about the permit load. So numbers and, yeah, overall information.
Because we only deal with it within the county, and we actually don't have regulatory authority. That's administered either by the state of New York through the DEC or through, if you're the town of Queensbury, for the example that I used, they're the MS4 community. They have the authority and approval authority for that. So I actually do not have readily those numbers because I don't deal with them at that level.
Okay. So Lori, do you have a handle on the NPDES stormwater permit load in Nebraska?
Well, I can tell you that there are 2 Phase 1 communities, the City of Omaha and the City of Lincoln, and then there are probably right around 20 Phase 2 communities all total. Again, you know, I don't work with all of them on a day-to-day basis, so I can't give you that exact number.
Okay, thanks. Jamie, any idea? NPDES
Well,
stormwater permit load?
The NIPT's construction general permit, which I oversee, we have about 2,500 permittees. Really 3,000. We they need to terminate their permit coverage, and that's why we're looking maybe to go to an annual fee because we don't always get the termination of the NOI. And I don't run I can't speak to the NPDES MS4 program, but I know that we do have about a handful of permittees for the MS4 program.
Okay. In Rhode Island, we just got a note in that said on NPDES construction general permits, about 100 to 200 active per year. Outstanding. Jim, you've been around this work a lot. What would be advice for those that are on the line that are just starting their urban and stormwater programs from your perspective, the top few recommendations you've got for them? One of the requests we had, or the requests we had to NASCA were, can you get some folks like Jim, Lori, Jamie, Stu, Randy, and Jennifer on the line so we can hear how this works so we get started in our state. So what advice do you have for starting in your state, in a state program?
Was that for me, Ray?
Yeah, let's start with you, Jim. Just advice you'd have for folks that want to start up a stormwater program.
Well, I think the biggest challenge that we had in our county was showing folks how it ties into economic development and what dealing with stormwater really means to our communities. In my description, I said that we have a lot of second homes in our county, and it's a big tourist destination. And you have to really show that in order to keep folks coming back and coming to our county, coming to the region, that water quality has to remain high. You know, people don't want to see broken stormwater systems or combined sewer overflows, you know, going out into the lake. So it's really, while it sounds great to say this is coming from the top down, it really has to have buy-in from the local community and build up. And that's where a lot of local lake associations, citizens groups, you know, they can really help out on forming the direction in which you want to go. It's been very important. Actually, they're just wrapping up in my office. We have a water quality strategy committee meeting 4 times a year, and they're wrapping that up here today. And those are the folks that are interested in water quality and other projects in our county. And these are the citizens of our county and the citizens of our communities moving it forward. You know, and then obviously it ties in with our DEC and other regulatory authorities to make sure that we're meeting all the communities are meeting the standards as set down from the EPA, and the DEC runs with it in our state. So working with the DEC, but you really have to have the communities understand, and the highway departments understand, that we're not just doing this so it looks good, that it actually is a viable reason behind it. And that's education and outreach sometimes gets, I think, played a bit too much, but in this case, if you're just starting it up, you have to get the message out there, and you have to have practical points that you can show to people who are in control of management or the money.
Excellent. Thanks, Jim. What do you think, Lori? Sage advice for the folks just starting their stormwater program?
I think the biggest component is education, and not necessarily public education, which is very important, but making sure that all of your departments are educated and all of your elected officials are educated. You know, what we run into a lot is, you know, it's usually dealt with within the Public Works Department, but, you know, planning isn't necessarily aware of it, and the zoning codes don't necessarily meet the regulations, or the legal department hasn't taken a look at it, and then all of a sudden you have an issue and they don't understand, you know, what your responsibilities are under your permit. And so I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice would be, you know, get everybody in a room or sit down with everybody one-on-one and make sure that they understand what your permit is and what you're required to do under that permit.
Excellent. Jamie?
Well, I would just echo the same sentiments as Jim and Lori. I don't need to have a good stakeholders group when developing a new program, and I would certainly look to other states' programs and not reinvent the wheel. I think there's a lot of good programs out there. So,
excellent. Thanks, folks. We did have one note on Rhode Island. It turns out that it's about 600 NPDES permits active per year. So we appreciate that. Thanks so much. To our speakers, Jim, Lori, Jamie, thanks so much for joining us today and giving us your insight not only on your programs but also on startup activities, if there are states out there that are just starting up. So I'm going to switch gears now and give over, going to mute you out, Jamie. Thanks so much, Jamie.
Sure. Thank you, Ray.
Thanks so much, Jim. Thanks so much, Lori.
Thank you.
Okay, going to unmute some lines. Mike Brown, are you still on the line?
I am, Ray.
Mike, any comments from you at this point?
No, just all good information, and you know, I'd have to echo a comment we just heard. I think from Jamie is, you know, there are a lot of great programs out there that have already established. If there's a state that's just getting into putting a program like this together, there really is no need to reinvent the wheel. Simply look at some of the programs that are out there, and I think you'll come away with some great ideas.
Yeah. NASCA, NACD, NRCS, there's a lot of folks who can help with that. But if they wanted to contact NASCA, they could just contact you, Mike, and you could put states in contact with others.
Absolutely, Ray. And at the end of the webinar, you're going to put my contact information up again, I believe. So feel free to contact me, and we'll help get you steered in the right direction.
Sure will. Mike, we're going to leave you unmuted also with the next three presenters. Stu Treefry, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Hi, Stu. Randy Braun, you on the line?
Yes.
Thanks, Randy. And Jennifer. Jennifer Orr. Hi, Jennifer. Welcome. So let's move right into the second round of our presentations for our webinar today. And it's my pleasure to introduce Stu Treefry from Washington State. The write-up Stu gave us said that in a state with the wettest location in the lower 48 states, along with some of the driest, Stu's going to speak with us about the Washington's 45 Conservation District implementing locally led solutions. So, Stu?
Thanks, Ray. It's a real pleasure to be here to talk to you folks, and what this is going to be is it's kind of an overview of how conservation districts in Washington are not only serving landowners, but doing what conservation districts do, and that's listening carefully to community needs, building the case that they're likely to be the most effective avenue for addressing one of our state's most important natural resource issues, and that's stormwater. One of the things, I'll lead with a quote here. A guy named Joe Holtrup, who's the manager of the Clallam Conservation District at the very end of the Olympic Peninsula, where the wettest and the driest places in western Washington are. He said, when you get right down to it, everything we do in some way addresses stormwater. And I think it was a pretty profound statement. I've always remembered that. So here's the basic working environment for conservation districts in Washington. We believe it's a non-regulatory environment. Their role is to provide non-regulatory incentive-based assistance to local citizens, and the role of regulatory agencies is to regulate. And there's kind of a hybridized situation with some agreements that allows regulatory agencies to refer landowners to districts, but the districts are not part of the regulatory process in kind of the enforcement mode. That's kind of the basics of how districts work in Washington. So, as we all know, conservation districts are only good as their partnerships. And this photo here is in our working environment with no specific legislative authorization to work on stormwater. Districts need to rely on their partnerships. So above is an actual photo from probably the most intensive partnership building process of any district in the country. I'll put it up against anybody. For 18 months, the King Conservation District, our most populous county, think Seattle, Microsoft, and Gridlock, they coordinated and facilitated a process to bring together 34 municipalities and the county to help build understanding of what the Conservation District has to offer. That process led to a multidisciplinary program and a funding package that totaled almost $6 million for the district to do these programs. It's all online on their website at kingcd.org if you want to look at it. It's a pretty interesting process. But I want to point out one individual in this picture here. In the lower left corner, you'll see a guy in a blue shirt, gray hair. That's Bill Knudsen. Bill is the chair of the King Conservation District. He's a retired dairy farmer, salmon watershed restoration advocate, and a real leader. This effort would not have happened like it did without his leadership. Here, Bill will be stepping down at the end of his term, and I just want to take this opportunity to recognize him on this national stage. So, next slide. The examples here will be concentrating in Puget Sound. I don't want to give short shrift to other areas of the state that are doing stormwater work. And for example, the Clark Conservation District in Southwest Washington, right across the river from Portland, is the fastest growing county in the state. They're building their program. They're not nearly where they want to be. I'll concentrate here in the Puget Sound. Most stormwater work is done in the Puget Sound region. But led by these Puget Sound conservation districts, the statewide survey of conservation stormwater activity was conducted, and here's some results of that work. By the way, the National Estuary Program has said that stormwater is the biggest natural resource threat in Puget Sound, so it's a huge issue in the Puget Sound region. So here's some of the findings of the work that the districts did statewide. Nearly 90% of the responding districts have employs staff that are experienced in delivering stormwater management techniques, and half the employees are highly trained in specific things like green infrastructure. 40% of the responding districts have completed stormwater demonstration projects. Over 40% of responding districts have provided stormwater-related services to local jurisdiction. However, only 20% of those responding districts receive funding specifically allocated to stormwater. That's a big issue. It's a big rub with districts in our state. And because 75% of the districts have long-term goals to either expand or establish their role in stormwater work. It's a issue that everybody recognizes. The numbers are considerably higher in Puget Sound. 63% of the districts offer cost share for underground projects. And 90% of the districts have built a diverse suite of LID demonstration sites for schools, neighborhood clusters, green streets, etc. Half of them receive money specifically for low-impact development, and 9 of the 12, so 3/4 of the districts, have invested in highly visible public projects, and we'll see some of them here. Here's the funding, the sources of funding for conservation districts in Washington that fund a lot of this work. Systems of rates and charges, which is a local thing, agreements with cities and towns, agreements with counties at the state level, which is much less than what is at the local level. Allocations from us, the State Conservation Commission, and other state agency grants. And here's kind of the rundown of what has been paid for, and we'll get into it here on the next slide. So the Kitsap Conservation District, I got a couple slides for them. They receive a percentage of the county surface water management fee paid by landowners to the tune of about $700,000 a year. Landowner assistance and rain garden program is what they focus on. They've also installed a massive stormwater project at Fairgrounds. These two pictures, the top picture is the average rain garden that they'll help install for landowners, and they also have a cost share program for these rain gardens. And at the bottom is this thing called Rain Garden in a Box, which is that's the office of the Kitsap Conservation District, and the water off the roof goes into this box and gets filtered out. It's kind of an interesting concept there. Next slide. They've done this massive work on at their county fairgrounds, about 6 acres. They've got a massive stormwater pond that you'll see there, and lots and lots and lots of permeable pavement that they designed and helped install at for the county fair. It's a huge operation there. The Pierce Conservation District. Next slide is they've got numerous innovative partnerships. The DPAVE program, which is represented in the bottom picture, I've got these pictures switched, sorry, is this picture down below is about 10 or 12 blocks from where I live. It's a program where it started in Portland, and Tacoma has taken it on, and the main implementer is the Pierce Conservation District, where they take up pavement and install rain gardens to help manage this massive amount of stormwater that comes off the areas in our neighborhoods. And the above picture is the city of Puyallup, where they have neighborhood-wide rain gardens. The city of Puyallup has about 1.5 FTEs to deal with this issue. So they've contracted with the Pierce Conservation District to help organize the effort to build these rain gardens to help do stormwater in a neighborhood-wide situation. It's a pretty intensive program. A lot of districts in our state do the educational requirement for phase 2. This is an example from the Skagit Conservation District, where they for years have done the educational piece for the city of Mount Vernon, which is their county seat in Skagit County. The Snohomish Conservation District has a multidisciplinary program. They've got a huge staff with lots of expertise to do all sorts of programs. It's our second biggest county, Snohomish County. I think it is, second or third. And for one thing I want to point out, if you go to their website, they have this public outreach program called Better Ground, which is kind of a cool thing, where they've got a series of videos which help demystify on-the-ground conservation for landowners. It's essentially a bunch of how-to videos and kind of explains to the end user what conservation means. And finally, racing through here because there's 10 minutes, I've been given the opportunity to have a little bit of a commercial here. I've had the honor of representing NASCA on the NECD Urban and Community Resource Policy Group. And I wanted to show some resources that are there that will be helpful to you in kind of going further here. First is the policy place. That policy link gets you to everything that they have on urban and community work. The second link is the networking opportunities. There's as of this morning, 336 individuals have partnered up on this Facebook page that networks us all to talk about urban and community conservation. And finally, most importantly, if you want to hear lots of presentations about what conservation districts are doing across the country in stormwater and many other urban things, there's monthly webinars, and there's about 2.5 years of webinars there. I mentioned the Kitsap Conservation District earlier. They will be presenting in the next year to talk about how they've fixed in an area of their county called Steel Creek, a really highly neighborhood-driven watershed that just needed fixing, and they've fixed it. And we'll talk about that hopefully sometime in 2016. And the last slide here, I'll close with a photo from the beautiful San Juan Islands. This is a rain garden in the town of Friday Harbor, which is their county seat, the only actual town in San Juan County. It's just up from the ferry dock. Tens of thousands of tourists walk by this rain garden every year. And if people would stop enjoying themselves long enough to pay attention, they would know that the San Juan Islands Conservation District is also a pretty important local player in stormwater. And with that, last slide is my contact information. And if anybody wants to contact me or get more information about any one of these districts or more of these districts, let me know, and I'll be glad to hook you up with that.
Well, thank you, Stu. Appreciate that presentation today. Encouraging everyone to go ahead and keep on typing our questions in. We'll take on as many of those as we can. And it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Randy Braun. Randy is from the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, Office of Water Quality. going to give us an overview about the work in Indiana. So Randy, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Take it away, Randy.
Okay, thank you. If we go to the first slide, please. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit about the MPDS program in Indiana, primarily stormwater permitting and our operational procedures and so forth. So if you go to the next slide. Once again, we're a delegated state through the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. We administer the Clean Water Act. Within our group, we administer 3 stormwater programs. All our stormwater programs are administered through an Indiana administrative code right now, but I'm going to be discussing some changes that we will be seeing in the next year or two. Next slide. One of our primary regulations is the stormwater discharges associated with construction activity. We basically, when the program first started in 1992, we regulated 5 acres or more of land disturbance, and beginning in 2003 under the Phase 2 program, we began to regulate land disturbances of 1 acre or more. Our regulation requires development of a construction plan and a stormwater pollution prevention plan for each project. We require implementation and management of the construction site and visual monitoring of project activities. As part of the construction component, we also require the plan to include provisions for post-construction stormwater quality measures. The objective here is that during that phase of development of the plan, the developer and the engineers can identify what the post-construction impacts will be. The second program we administer, which I'm not going to spend a lot of time on today, is our industrial stormwater. We administer this program also within the section. And this basically, we regulate industrial operations exposed to rainfall events. And once again, an industrial operator is required to develop a plan and manage on-site operations. And for this program, we do require annual sampling of stormwater runoff discharges. Next. The third program that we're involved with, this program began in 2003 as part of Phase 2. We have 186 municipal basically municipal separate storm sewer system entities. These entities are required to develop local stormwater programs. They would have components in their program to include everything from education to illicit discharge, post-construction, and construction site runoff. Next. So I'd like to spend a little time talking about the role of soil and water conservation districts in Indiana and talk a little bit about the progression we've seen since 1992. SWC's role, the highest level of participation would be with the construction site runoff program, which is more in line with what the objectives and the mission of soil and water districts are in Indiana. They're also involved with MS4 programs, and we'll talk a little bit about the transition that occurred in 2003, 2005, when the agency designated MS4s to become permittees. And then industrial stormwater, SWCs have very little role in that program. So we probably won't be talking much more about the stormwater industrial. Under the Phase 2 regulations in 1992, the primary structure, responsibility for implementation was the Indiana Department of Environmental Management pretty much did administrative process and enforcement of the regulations. During that time period, and it began in about 1993, there was a memorandum of agreement between IDEM and local soil and water districts and the DNR Division of Soil Conservation. At that time, I was part of the Division of Soil Conservation, and we worked very closely with soil and water districts. Part of the objective to administer the rule of 1992 was to take a state-based program and basically administer portions of it at the local level. And the soil and water conservation districts were one of the best avenues to do this, as we have one in each of the 92 counties in Indiana. Next. And then with Phase 2 NPDES regulations in 2003, there were some significant changes in the state of Indiana. And in around 2005, the program structure changed. The Indiana Department of Natural Resources was basically, the agency was moved to a new State Department of Agriculture. And the program for doing stormwater through that agency was turned back exclusively over to the Indiana Department of Environmental Management. And that's the time I actually switched back over came over to work for IDEM. So we kind of had to reevaluate the entire program. And we actually have created a new memorandum of agreement with the soil and water districts in the state. So the agreement now is between the Indiana Department of Environmental Management and those 92 soil and water conservation districts. So the new structure is a lot more complicated than we had in the past. The MOU right now allows soil and water districts to actually choose their level of participation in the stormwater program. And part of this has to do with MS4s, and we'll talk a little more about how MS4s play into involvement of soil and water districts. But the 3 levels of participation, our state regulation requires all construction and stormwater plans to be submitted to the soil and water districts where there's not an MS4 community. So the MS4 can choose to have an administrative role, which basically they receive the plans and then they would contact one of the Indiana Department of Environmental Management resource staff, regional stormwater specialists, and the stormwater specialists would come in, review the plans for those proposed projects in those communities or in those SWCs. An SWC can also choose to do the administrative role as well as do the technical plan review. A soil and water district having technical staff could actually go in, review those plans in accordance with the state regulation to make sure that the plans meet those requirements of our rule. The 3rd level of participation, a soil and water district can actually choose to do the administrative, technical plan review, and site inspection. So at the 3rd level, the soil and water district becomes more involved in the regulatory process. If they go out and do site inspections, they document those site inspections on a form. If there is any kind of compliance issue, our regional stormwater specialists would work with the soil and water district. We would actually use their documentation as part of any compliance or enforcement action that our agency might take. Next. In 2003, I also mentioned there was an establishment of the MS4s. At this point in time in 2003, we made a very strong effort working with our state conservation district association to get SWCs more involved with MS4s. We did quite a few outreach events, went to soil and water district board meetings trying to promote SWC's role with MS4s. So the result of that is we've had quite a few MS4s that either contracted or established MOAs with MS4s across the state. They do everything from administering education programs for the MS4. Some of them actually participate in plan review and site inspection within the MS4. The roles vary by SWC. Some SWCs are not involved at all with the MS4 program. We have at least one SWC that has served as the MS4 coordinator for a partnership of MS4s in the northern part of the state. And that's probably one of the more active SWCs that we've had in participating with MS4s. Next. So I mentioned earlier that we currently administer our stormwater regulations by administrative rule. The administrative rule process takes quite a bit of time when we want to update those. There are only a few states in the country that actually administer their NPDES program this way for stormwater. We're in the process, at the request of EPA, to go to drafting new master general permits for all our stormwater programs. And we've been involved in that process for probably about the last year and a half. And hopefully by the end of this year, we will be submitting our construction site runoff, our industrial stormwater, and our MS4 permits to EPA for approval. And at that point, we will make a switch over to administer the programs that way. One of the unique things that we have done in Indiana is I'm the section chief for the wetlands and stormwater programs, and they combined our programs probably in about 2006. One of the reasons we did this is the Wetlands Section 401 Water Quality Certification Program and our Isolated Wetlands Program. Those staff actually permit impacts to land resource and water resources, as would, say, a new construction project. So there's a lot of overlap. Oftentimes we'll have a construction project that's going to impact the wetland. Therefore, the staff is in the same section. They work collectively together to administer the permits. This provides a level of consistency with the regulated public. The staff works very close together. We have about 8 staff for each program, about 8 for wetlands and 8 for stormwater. And overall, this approach has improved program efficiencies across the program. Just a kind of an overview of staff. We have myself, administrative staff, stormwater permits coordinator that's responsible for making sure the flow of permits and applications that come through the door are processed in a timely manner. We have one person dedicated as an MS4 coordinator, and then we have 6 total regional stormwater specialists. The stormwater specialists basically do a lot of the field work. They not only do construction site runoff, they do industrial stormwater, and they also participate in various aspects of the MS4 permitting process. And then there's 8 total wetlands project managers that administer the wetlands program. Next. So program priorities, basically permitting, complaint responsiveness. We do quite a bit of training and outreach. And then we do have development of resource materials, whether they be brochures, permitting guidance documents, and then we do have an Indiana Stormwater Quality Manual, which we are in the early stages of looking at where we're going to make updates this next couple of years. Next slide. And this is the Stormwater Quality Manual that's available on our website. Basically, it has sections on planning principles that talk about layout and design, inventorying project sites, plan design elements, and project management. How do you monitor and maintain a project through the permitting process? And our manual actually covers construction site runoff practices as well as post-construction practices. Next. And this is contact information, so that's all I have unless there's any questions.
Well, thanks so much, Randy, and just want to tell, again, all the speakers how much we appreciate your presentations today. As a reminder, what we're trying to do with this informational webinar is whet your appetite a bit on the stormwater and urban conservation programs, so that you can recontact, and Randy and the other presenters have given you presentation in their presentation, the summary of their contact information. We'll also be sending that back out to folks too, so that you'll have a copy of that contact information to contact these speakers. So, Randy, again, thank you. My pleasure then to introduce our 6th speaker, Jennifer Orr is with us today from Pennsylvania, and she's going to be speaking on the overview of Pennsylvania's stormwater management approach, including the legislation, the construction stormwater program, permits, planning, and MS4 program. So Jennifer, let's do an audio check. Make sure you're still on.
I'm still here.
Okay, Jennifer, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to all of you today. Again, my name's Jennifer Orr. I'm the chief of the NPDES construction section, and actually an erosion control section in Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. And just a note about some of the other presenters had talked about varying levels of organization at the state level. And in Pennsylvania, we are in a bureau, the NPDES construction section, that is separate from our MS4 and our industrial stormwater programming programs, as well as one of our Pennsylvania-specific stormwater programs, our Act 167 program. So that makes it a little bit challenging to make sure that all the different facets of stormwater management in Pennsylvania work together, but I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we kind of try and do that in the state of Pennsylvania and some of the resources we use to do that. And just to kind of frame the issue, and this is not obviously Pennsylvania specific, but when we talk about stormwater management in Pennsylvania, we do training, we do outreach, and that sort of thing. We're generally talking about implementing programs and efforts to essentially replicate our naturally occurring hydrologic cycle as much as we can by using both sound site design and construction practices. And in those cases where we have changes in that naturally occurring hydrologic cycle, to implement our best management practices to address those runoff changes. Next slide. And so in Pennsylvania, we actually have some regulatory authority to do this. Our main regulatory authority that we use in terms of stormwater management is actually, it's 25 Pennsylvania Code Chapter 102. It's erosion and sedimentation control and stormwater management. This section of our regulation in Pennsylvania has actually been around since 1972 and has evolved from a strictly state erosion control type program to an integrated NPDES erosion control and stormwater management type program and authority. We are in Pennsylvania, again, a delegated state from EPA for NPDES program. So we have largely the construction and post-construction sections, and then our MS4 program, along with industrial stormwater, which I'm just going to mention and not really talk much about today. But our construction and post-construction program deals mostly with new and redevelopment, while the MS4 program deals a lot with retrofitting in Pennsylvania of urban areas. A lot of the other states have shown lots of great examples of how that's done. Removal of, impervious areas, replacement with pervious surfaces, retrofitting of long installed urban BMPs and those sorts of things. So that's kind of how we have the program structured in Pennsylvania. Next slide. And then, so we have the MS4, the construction stormwater, those are the NPDES programs, and then we have a state-specific program that's called Act 167. And Act 167 is actually a local stormwater planning type of authority. It has its actual own regulatory authority, its own act, its own legislation. And it's integrated with our MS4 and our construction stormwater programs to essentially make the 3 levels and 3 types of stormwater management programs in Pennsylvania work as seamlessly as possible to achieve kind of some common goals. So what we're looking for when we are doing our stormwater management in Pennsylvania is we're looking at again, replicating that natural cycle and having no net change in our rate and volume and meeting water quality goals for our post-construction stormwater runoff. We're looking to have net decreases in areas via retrofits, largely in our MS4s, but also when we have areas outside of MS4s where we're doing redevelopment activities, urban infill, those types of things, we look to have retrofits. Pennsylvania, by the way, is about 3/4 rural and 1/4 either urban or suburban, largely in the southern tier of the state. So a large portion of our state actually is without MS4 coverage for MPDES. In spite of that, we have over 1,000 MS4 permits because of the type of government we have in Pennsylvania, our local government structure. One of the other things that we do to prevent or to promote stormwater management in Pennsylvania is when we have new and redevelopment projects, we make the assumption in those projects that the pre-existing condition for those projects is actually a meadow, regardless of what it may actually be. And what this helps to do is actually provide us with a conservative estimate of stormwater that we have to control using best management practices. And it helps us, especially in urban areas, to kind of make up for some of those, you know, maybe sins of the past where we didn't address volume concerns as much, and we were just addressing rate in, you know, say the 70s and 80s. In addition, our Act 167 includes planning and municipal review of small projects. Things that are under Chapter 102 regulates through the MPDES program things that are 1 acre or greater of earth disturbance, requires erosion and sedimentation control plans for things down to 1,000 square feet. Or if they're in one of our more special protection or higher quality watersheds, there is no lower threshold. They must have an erosion and sedimentation control plan regardless of the size of the project. So those three levels kind of all work together. And we integrate the stormwater management through using Pennsylvania's construction and post-construction programs to serve as what's called a qualifying local program for our MS4 program. And in the MS4s, they have to have, as part of their minimum control measures, or MCMs, both a construction and a post-construction stormwater management program. In Pennsylvania, with one exception, and that's actually the city of Philadelphia, they rely, all our MS4s rely on Pennsylvania's program for construction and post-construction. Our permits must be designed in accordance with our Act 167, our local stormwater plans, so that we coordinate between the state level and the local level. And in addition, we do not allow any changes in volume from development or redevelopment activities through the construction program in areas such as MS4s or that have CSOs, things with long-term control plans, so that we're not, by new development, increasing discharges to an MS4 community. So we have a lot of feedback mechanisms to do that. Next slide. In addition, we actually have sections of our reg that talk about roles and responsibilities of local municipalities or counties, specifically as it relates in Pennsylvania to issuing building permits or other approvals. And essentially what it says is that they may not issue those types of approvals to actually do house construction or other types of construction until the MPDES permits have been received from the department or the county conservation district for that project. Next slide. So in Pennsylvania, largely we work with our county conservation districts. We have 66, actually 67, but Philadelphia does not have one. So we work through our 66 county conservation districts for, this is a regulatory program. We've heard different states say that different degrees of regulation through their county conservation districts or their soil and water conservation districts. In Pennsylvania, they can choose similar to Indiana, a level of how involved they would like to be, all the way up to being delegated for compliance and enforcement, so that they actually do compliance and enforcement, the actual, any sort of documentation, as well as participating in conferences and that sort of thing to work out fines and payments and that sort of stuff. Stormwater reviews are conducted by some of our conservation districts, and in cases where the conservation district does not do that, has not chosen that level of delegation, they're done by our regional department offices. And all of this is in addition to municipal reviews that are done through either Act 167, MS4s, or municipal ordinance. Next slide. As far as our manuals and tools that we have both an erosion and sedimentation control manual as well as a post-construction stormwater management manual in Pennsylvania. Generally, when we do these manuals, we use a stakeholder and an expert group to put those together. They must be public participated in our state because they are technical guidance through our department. So generally, this is not a short process, but it allows for a lot of public comment and a lot of improvement of those documents through that public comment process. And then we also have, we recognize that manuals are kind of static documents. Once it's printed, time moves on, technologies move on. And so we have procedures in place in the state of Pennsylvania that allow for new technologies or applications of already existent technologies that may be new to be reviewed and implemented between those manual updates and used by our regulated community and those that review our plans, our conservation districts, and others in Pennsylvania. Next slide. And then training, we do not have a kind of like Delaware mentioned where they have kind of almost an academy type process. We have training, but it's less of a certification process as it is more education to our regulated community and those doing plan reviews internally, both in the department and our county conservation districts. We, in the last number of years, have gone to doing a lot of technology-based webinar trainings. We found that to be extremely useful tool, especially being able to record those, archive them for later. So that's something we've really had success with in Pennsylvania. And we highly utilize the train the trainer concept, where we'll have training for a group of conservation districts, and then they in turn will have a local training where they will train a couple hundred people based on what we have trained them. So we definitely utilize the train the trainer concept. Next slide. And with that, we can, I guess, go back to the moderator and take any questions.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, and thanks so much for fighting through the technical difficulties I know you're having this morning. So we're just so pleased to have you join us. Thanks to Randy and Stu. Please hold on the line. We've got several questions here coming up. So Stu, let's start with you if you're still on the line.
I'm here.
How did Washington's conservation districts become involved in stormwater management activities? Was it one or more districts that started and others followed? Or was there an overall effort, a statewide initiative led by the state? And if so, by whom? So we got several parts here.
Yeah, I'll say it was more organic. And I mentioned in an earlier slide that it was conservation districts get a lot of demands from their community, and when in doubt, people will pick up the phone and call the conservation district because they don't know where to go, or when a conservation district technical staff goes out to a landowner, they'll find stuff. And then they start finding funding to deal with whatever that stuff is. And so when the boards get together to do their plan of work, they'll talk about all the demands on the district and what the resource concerns are. In our state, we've tried to make the plans count, and the plans matter. And so we're making sure that when a district goes out and plans their scope of work, they bring a lot of partners along, and the partners have pockets, and the pockets have money in them. And so it's a more organic process. There is a regulatory structure, obviously, for municipal stormwater. And what a lot of towns are finding is that, especially when they don't have the resources, that the conservation district either has or has access to technical staff that can help them meet their legal requirements. And so it's just something that evolved over time. The most overt involvement was the Kitsap example, where they were actually written into the Surface Water Management Code, and they receive a percentage of those fees that landowners pay. So it's not anything that was organized, but it's just really a lot of districts paying attention to what the resource concerns are and organizing themselves and getting after it, really. And so what essentially all the districts I showed you today and more have used that model to get what they where they are now as far as stormwater. I wish I could say there was a magic pill, magic process, but there wasn't. There was a lot of hard work and a lot of listening to what the needs were of landowners and the local municipalities.
Thanks, Stu. Next question for Randy in Indiana. Can you expound upon your construction activity, education, and outreach efforts in particular?
Basically, our construction activity related to training and education. Primarily, we do several statewide conferences a year. We actually have an MS4 annual meeting that we co-host with the MS4s. Usually there's a construction component to that program. That's a day-long seminar or a conference. And then we actually have Indiana Association of Floodplain and Stormwater Managers organization. And that's basically a 2.5-day conference, and we usually present at that. Other than that, our primary goal is to present within local MS4s. Oftentimes we will assist SWCs and MS4s with their educational components for the development community. And then, from a standpoint of doing anything that's organized that we initiate ourselves, we don't do that. We don't currently have any kind of certification program, although we're trying to promote EnviroSearch as an option for the development community to become what we consider trained individuals to do to develop plans, as well as to do the self-monitoring on a construction site. So there is no, like I said, there's no state certification, but if somebody calls, we often say that there's national certifications that are available that they could go obtain a certification and therefore become a trained individual.
Thanks, Randy. Jennifer, why doesn't Philadelphia have a conservation district is the next question.
That's a really good question, and to be quite frank with you, I'm not sure. But it's because essentially Philadelphia County is all of the city of Philadelphia. And so instead of kind of county-wide, they essentially have, in Philadelphia County, they actually have Philadelphia Water Department that takes over many of the same types of roles that a county conservation district in any of our other 66 counties would do in Pennsylvania. So we do still have, that type of presence. It's just a little bit of a different type of arrangement because of them not having something actually at the county level.
Thanks. Also, Jennifer, how many members are on your technical BMP review committees, and how are they appointed?
Good question. Right now we're actually going through some updates to our Stormwater BMP manual, and we're working actually with an external kind of stakeholder group to do that at this point, and we may actually be coming up with a state-run or a department-run stakeholder group as well. In terms of how many people that would be, generally when we have a stakeholder group, we're looking at somewhere between 20 and 30 individuals. So a fairly large group in terms of stakeholder involvement. And then we generally try and break it down into kind of groups or sub-heading, subtopics to make it more manageable, because 20 or 30 people dealing with, each thing gets a little bit unwieldy. So that's generally about the number of people that we're looking at when we're doing this stakeholder involvement process.
Thanks so much. Also, another question for you, Jennifer. Does Pennsylvania use performance standards to select your best management practices for your manual?
So in terms of the performance standards, we actually have state performance standards in our in the Chapter 102 regulations, using design storms and that sort of thing. We also, though, because a large part of Pennsylvania is related and drains to the Chesapeake Bay, we are very, very involved in the Chesapeake Bay performance standards. And so it depends on if we're looking at things through the Chesapeake Bay reporting lens. Sometimes we'll use one type of standard to do reporting and that sort of thing. And if we're looking at it through the state regulatory lens, we have a little bit of a different way to look at things.
Excellent. Thanks so much. The next question again, Jennifer, for you, does Pennsylvania keep an approved products list that meet the BMP standards as found in the manual?
Yes. Yeah, actually, I touched on that a little bit. We have, because, as I mentioned, once we do a manual, things become static in that manual. We actually have a process where people can come into us either with a standalone product or procedure, or they can come into us with a permit where they would like to implement one of those types of products or procedures. And we work with them basically on both of those types of approaches. When we're looking at evaluating a product or procedure, a lot of times we'll ask for, what's been done. Do you have lab testing? Do you have field testing? What are your design criteria? Those types of things. In addition, when we're looking at doing it through a permit and doing actual field testing in the state of Pennsylvania, we will often ask for essentially to have backup BMPs, contingency plans, that sort of thing, in the event of failure for implementing those BMPs. And oftentimes we'll run them side by side with something that actually is known and has a performance standard in our manual. So.
Okay, excellent. I did have through the chat, we did have some information regarding the numbers of NPDES permits, and so let me just give those to you too if you're writing those down. From Jamie in Delaware, there are about 250 to 300 NPDES construction general permits per year, and from Randy in Indiana, that number is approximately 8,000 construction permits, 4,000 industrial stormwater, and 186 other permits. So just to let you know, we've got some more information. MS4s, 186 MS4s in Indiana. So we appreciate that. So let's have that same question for Stu, Randy, and Jennifer on sage advice for those states that are just getting started in the stormwater program development. Stu?
Wow. It'd be great if you had what we didn't have, which was legislative authority to be involved in this. I mean, just like the old Steve Martin quote, "How to be a millionaire? First, you get $1 million." You just and we don't. So what we've, I guess, repeating what I said before, is we've just made the plans of work matter. We paid attention to each district's plan of work, and we allowed them to make requests of us for allocations that meet their needs. And it's not a lot of money from us, but it also, when me and my counterparts work with local districts, we help them bring together with their local partners that do have the legislative mandate and also the funding, and the districts have the technical expertise. Play matchmaker, get those folks together, and let it evolve from there. Now, there's been more work being done by our State Association of Conservation Districts on stormwater. There was a request from districts for roughly $1 million that didn't make it through the process. It doesn't seem like it's going to be making it through the process. But now there's conservation districts getting together and actually requesting money specifically for stormwater management. And so it's harder for us because we're totally voluntary. We're not in the regulatory process, and we're not written into the codes except for one county. So it's like I said earlier, more organic. It just evolves, and we try to make it work. And the more people get together, the more partnerships that are built, the more opportunity there is to get the funding and maybe even the legislative mandate to do this work. But right now, we don't have it.
Very good. Randy, some sage advice for folks just getting started.
I think the primary thing with the state regulation for stormwater, primarily construction, like I said during my presentation, we have different levels of participation. For a stormwater district that wants to move into more of the technical realm or be more involved in construction site inspection, I think it goes back to district capacity building. Our agency doesn't work, the Department of Environmental Management, we don't work directly with stormwater districts as far as their development and overall programs. That's the Indiana State Department of Agriculture. So they would work with the State Department of Agriculture, and there's a State Soil Conservation Board that oversees and works with stormwater districts. So they would work through those two entities to develop that capacity, possibly find funding for positions, also possibly work with their local counties to obtain funding for staff. Our role would be to help support them through that process, coordinate with the other two agencies, and then as they bring people on board or they start to develop those mechanisms to be more involved, we would provide the technical training to the saltwater district. And then as far as a saltwater district that's in an MS4, that process is more working with the MS4 to define what their role would be, and either through contracts or MOAs, establish that working relationship with the MS4 to try to participate with them at the local level.
Thanks, Randy. And Jennifer, some sage advice for folks just getting in the business of stormwater work, stormwater urban work.
I'm going to echo what a lot of the other presenters have said. I think absolutely utilizing the partnerships and the drive that's there, often at the local level, to really drive the process. In Pennsylvania, we're very fortunate. Before the Phase 1 and Phase 2 rules from EPA regarding MPDES Construction Stormwater, we actually had, since the mid-'80s, our soil and our conservation districts involved in state permitting for erosion and sedimentation control, even back in the 80s. But that started with local, local partnerships and people that felt very strongly and passionately about preserving and protecting their natural resources at the local level. And over time, that has, evolved in many ways. Funding, it has evolved in terms of delegating authority to those districts, and also in, codifying some of our authorities in our state regulations. So, because we have a long history in Pennsylvania, I can kind of look back at some of that and say, yeah, exactly, echoing exactly what many of the other presenters are saying, that maybe a little bit earlier on that timeline, that, as it goes, it's going to, you would, hope that it's going to catch momentum, and then after a while it kind of becomes self-sustaining. In Pennsylvania right now, out of the governor's budget, we receive funding every year for our county conservation districts to be delegated these programs. So it actually now is in our state budget. But that didn't start out that way. It had to evolve that way over time. So I would just say, working with the local drive and the local partnerships and continuing to use that, local fervor to drive the programs is really key.
Thanks so much, Jennifer, again, for your presentation and your answers to these questions. Randy, thanks so much to you also for your presentation today. Stu, thank you for your presentation today. Well, it's my pleasure to, you bet. It's my pleasure to turn the remaining closing remarks over to Mike Brown, who is standing ready to close our session today. Mike?
Thank you, Ray. Folks, thanks so much for your participation. Speakers did a great job. That was evident by the number of questions that were posed. As you can see, there are some great programs around the country, and if there's any more information we can dig up for any of you out there, that be it more information from our speakers or from other states, please contact me. Yeah, there you go. My name is Mike Brown, and Ray, do you have my email information?
Let me run I'll run it back up on the screen here. Hang on.
But we'll be happy to track down any information we can get for you, and that's our job here at NASCA. Our greatest strength is the information we share. So as soon as Ray is able to get that email up, you can jot that down. And again, thanks so much. It was a valuable session today.
Thanks, Mike. Folks, we had a powerhouse group of presenters and a powerhouse group of folks that were on the line with us, many of which are technical experts in this area. We appreciate your time today. Again, if you did have comments, suggestions, send those along to Mike at the email address posted on the screen. With that then, have a good day, folks, and enjoy the rest of your week. Good day.